Welcome everybody. My name is Jessica Brown. I'm co-founder of the Action Exchange and Head of Engagement for Back to Blue, a partnership between Economist Impact and the Nippon Foundation. I'd like to welcome three amazing women speakers and thank you to everyone who's joining us here. First, Kirana Agustina is Engagement Specialist for the National Plastic Action Partnership in Indonesia for the World Resources Institute. Seema Arora is Deputy Director General for the Confederation of Indian Industries, one of the leading industry bodies in India. And Anupa Ahi is Vice President of TOMRA. We heard this morning from President Whipps that instead of small island developing states, we should refer to them as large ocean states. And Asia Pacific is a large ocean region. So many of the discussions that are happening at a global level about ocean health and the blue economy are absolutely mission critical here. And this is particularly true for plastics. The combination of rapid economic growth, the presence of major manufacturing and production hubs, patchy and often quite poor waste management, and a legacy of importing waste has created a perfect storm, putting the region at the epicenter of the plastic crisis. And, you know, the audience here, this is all stuff you already know. 50% of global plastic production is in Asia, 20% from China alone. And we've been talking a lot about upstream versus downstream. You know, recycling is part of the mix, but we also need to reduce and reuse. But I think one big elephant in the room with that discussion is that in many countries in the Asia-Pacific region, plastics accounts for a not insubstantial proportion of GDP. So the economic impact of this transition on middle income and low income countries, in particular in Asia-Pacific, is going to be painful. We can't get around that, and we can't wish that away. So this meeting is happening at the same time as the first International Negotiating Committee meeting in Uruguay on the Global Plastics Treaty. And so we're talking today about Asia-Pacific's role negotiating a global treaty on plastic pollution. And I'd really like to start the discussion with this proposition, which is, if the plastic treaty is not successful in Asia-Pacific, it will not be successful anywhere. Getting plastics right for this region is absolutely critical to the success of the treaty overall. So the question then for us is, how is it already being done? What is happening in Asia Pacific that other countries and other industries and companies can learn from? What are the barriers to a truly Asia inclusive treaty, and how can they be overcome? So with this, I'll turn to my panel and, you know, ask all of you very quickly, just in turn, quick fire answer. And we all promised that we'd be very high energy to keep you awake after lunch on day 2 of the conference. Kirana, can I start with you? I mean, how confident are you that, and you know, you can use your yes/no card if you want to make it really quick. Are you confident that the treaty process is on track to deliver for Asia? Yes. Okay, good start. Seema, how about you?
So I think it's too early to say, but I think we're hearing the right noises. But I would think that we need to really put very high ambition goals and then make sure that the countries are accountable, but leave flexibility for each country and each actor to do their bit in this.
Wonderful. Anupa?
Thank you. The short answer is no.
Good. A bit of debate.
I believe in it. I believe in it. I believe in the process. But are we on track? Yeah. And is Asia Pacific in the center of it? My feeling is this.
Okay, and that's a good place really for us to start digging into the discussion, because I think we all know where we need to go. The question is, how do we get there? And there are some examples that are working, and we're fortunate enough to have 3 experts with us today who are working in this. Kirana, can you start and just tell us a little bit about the NPAP in Indonesia? And I think for our audience, both here in the room and online, we will have some people who know it very well, but others who don't. So just a quick introduction introduction to the NPAP, and what have been some of the learnings and the challenges, and how applicable can they be to the rest of the region to make sure we've got a treaty that sticks?
Right, thank you so much. So I'll start with a bit background. So as maybe people have heard that Indonesia was stated as the second largest marine debris polluter in the world, although nationally it's quite debatable because we all know that plastic in our ocean, they don't have passport. And we are the largest archipelagic nation with 17,000 islands. And to some other countries, especially in the global north, maybe they don't have they don't surrounding by the water, but in Indonesia, nationally, geographically, we are in the middle of Ecuador. Has a strong current that bring up all the plastic from the north to the south. So thinking of that, it's also become debatable whether we are the plastic producer or we are the victim of the ocean plastic pollution. But it was the wake-up call for the government, especially for our president, and he was stated that we will reduce 70% of our plastic ocean by 2025. But then the government also realized, oh, we cannot work alone. This plastic is a very complex issue. It's not only environmental issue, but it's economic issue, it's a health issue, it's humanitarian crisis issue. So that's why back in 2018, our minister joining the Global Plastic Initiative Dialogue in UN Assembly. And then trying to bring the global plastic action partnership model is not a project, but it's a way of thinking how the public, private, and private sector can work together and collaborate to achieve this complex issue. So we started back in 2019. Now, in the first year, we try to find the real problems, because when we talk about the plastic issue, it has also to be locally led-driven, what is exactly in the countries happening. So we had an advisory group consists of government, scientists, private sector, and public society as well. And we then find out, oh, this is the issue. If we want to create change in Indonesia, then the problem is not only in mega and medium city, but in the rural and remote area, because again, we have so many islands. And then the problem is the accessibility and the behavior of the people. Most of them either burn the waste, which create more pollution, or dump into the land, or leakage to our ocean. So by understanding the local problem in NPAP, we are trying to come up with the 5 intervention action. Of course, start by waste hierarchy, need to first reduction, how then we can reduce our avoidable single use, and then how we can redesign the material, become biodegradable, but also compostable. But if not, then high value of recycling. Also, unfortunately, the problem is the waste management and waste collection. And we only collect 39%, which is less than 50% of our waste is being collected. So then how then come joining all the innovators in different across of the region to support the double our waste collection to achieve the target. And also how we can build infrastructure in sorting facility and double our recycling, four-time recycling rates. Currently, it's only 10%. So in NPAP, we are trying to have more constructive platform. It's not only like a talk show, like convening platform, but in a constructive way. We have the action plan, and then after we build the action plan, then who will implement it? It's implemented by 5 task force. So we convene all the financing community in the financing task force to understand how we can unlock the financing gaps in operationaling the waste management. And then after that, how we can boost innovation by convening all the innovator startup, SMEs in the community. And after that, the policy, because we need policy on board as well. What are exactly policy needed in Indonesia in order our achieving the target? And good thing Indonesia has a government target as well. By 2030, we want to phasing out all the single-use plastic. Then how we find enabler around Indonesia to ensure this policy can be achieved. And then the last two, how we can measure, because if we cannot measure, we cannot know how far our success. So we collect all the scientific community as well under the Matrix Task Force to understand the lack of data, how we can improve the data. And lastly, which is most important, finally, is the behavior change. Because again, the behavior change is one of the bottlenecks. So how we can collect all the, not only the industry, because when we talk about behavior change, not only us, the community or individually, but how we can change the private sector, the business model, the industry, how we can change the government as well through the policy. But yeah, again, everyone needs to understand how we can all change collaboratively. So that's NPAP. We build the roadmaps and we convene now 150 members. And yeah, we matchmaking between sectors during these past 2 years. Yeah.
And as far as I'm aware anyway, it's probably one of the most comprehensive and holistic projects in the region to address the whole plastics life cycle and all the different types of solutions. Do you have any mechanisms in place for sharing your learnings, your success, your wins with others from the region?
Yeah. So nationally, we have dialogues. We are currently also mapping all the best practices in the upstream and downstream. We just, for instance, during the last Road to G20 events, we are able to collect 43 commitments, which value 70 trillion Indonesia rupiah, which is very big. So in NPAP, we will collect all the initiative across the actors, and then after that, we can understand where's the money is, what are the projects, and especially since our country is really big, what are the projects in the rural area, in the west of Indonesia, in the central, or in the east, and then we can share it to public, and especially for the secretariat, we are trying to matchmaking and to scaling up the collaboration and also to share it. But we also have a NPAP in region and globally, so we have a knowledge exchange sharing as well. And maybe the good news, just currently I received from my colleague from the GPAP or the Global Plastic Action Partnership. We will collaborate with the Ellen MacArthur and also Plastic Pact through RAP to have a 1-year schedule plan to sharing our knowledge to support the Global Plastic Treaty as well.
Wow, that's really important, and I think we've seen so many different programs working, everyone with the same goal, but sometimes not always coordinated. So that coordination is so welcome. Seema, from one very big complicated country to another, the National Plastics Pact is another different but really interesting example of bringing together different stakeholder groups to try to get action. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing and some of the wins you've had in India and also some of the challenges you faced along the way?
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you. It's lovely to be here. Just for the audience, CII, very large industry body, 10,000 direct members, 66 offices in the country. So we work very closely at the grassroots level with our members. And therefore, one of the areas that we picked up to work on, and that was also because the government of India, in sometime in 2019-20, actually said that single-use plastic has to be phased out, and we do have now a ban on 18 types of single-use plastic, and also a very ambitious EPR regime in the country, which was announced earlier this year in February 2022. So with all this backdrop, CII actually is really a platform to bring different businesses together, different stakeholders together, and we therefore launched the India Plastic Pact in September last year. Now, the uniqueness of this pact is that it covers the entire value chain, right from the resin manufacturer to the recycler, and also includes the informal sector in some way, representatives, because as you know, in India, there's a huge amount of informal sector that works, the rag pickers and the waste pickers that are there, and who also need to be considered as we look at phasing out or redesigning the entire business models, as was mentioned. So under the Plastic Pact, all these players and especially all of them who have signed up are the big brands. The focus of the Plastic Pact is packaging, actually, because that's the single largest contributor to the littering and the waste problem that we see. So essentially, there are 4 targets that they all voluntarily, collectively sign up to meet as a part of the pact. Until 2030, they've agreed to list out the most problematic plastic packaging material and take measures to address them through redesign and innovation. So first thing is we agree that these are the problematic materials. And believe me, this is all voluntary, so they want to go beyond what already the law is saying. Second target is around 100% of plastic packaging to be made either reusable, recyclable, or compostable. 100% of the packaging. This is by 2030. 50% of plastic packaging to actually be effectively recycled by 2030. And finally, 25% average recycled content to be there across all plastic packaging for the members of the India Plastic Pact. So these are the 4 targets that all the members have actually collectively agreed to. A lot of back and forth, a lot of understanding of the different challenges that the members would face, and whether we have the infrastructure, et cetera, went into all this. Now, there's also a very strong governance mechanism here, because it can't be just that we sign up and then we don't deliver anything. And there's also a very strong engagement mechanism that CII has put into place. Again, it's led by our members only, but we are there at the back end to make sure there's a proper institutional structure around it. So each of the targets has an action group, and the action groups actually help understand the challenges, the barriers, the enablers, the ecosystem level changes that are required so that we can actually help them achieve the targets. There's guidance that is put out, there are roadmaps that are prepared, and there's actual data that is then collected. In fact, every member of the pact has to report back individually into the pact, and publicly the pact will put out collective information as to the progress against the 4 targets, so that there's not something that we've signed up and there's no progress that we are reporting. Now, you also, for example, the guidance that we give is how do you actually, design, what is the design guidance for PET bottles, for example? What could you do for food-grade rPET, for example? So these are some of the issues that keep coming up, and as Plastic Pact members, together with the scientific community, together with the research laboratories in India, who are also very strong, actually. Another function of the Plastic Pact is also to then coalesce all this learning and the challenges and the opportunities and feed it back into the policy system. And as CII, we work very closely with the government to do this. And we can see that, the EPR regime that is there, what are the challenges, practically how the members are having the problem, and what are the solutions? What should an EPR 2.0 look like, for example? What are the infrastructure challenges? So there's a constant dialogue that goes on. Now, I also mentioned that, the informal sector is very important, and I think there is also a mention of the behavior change. Outside the Plastic Pact, and while the Plastic Pact continues to work with the members, CII also has a CII Foundation, which works at the community level. And we have initiated programs at the community level where we are working to demonstrate how can you build effective community engagement, because the biggest problem in countries like India and everywhere else also is this household level segregation doesn't happen. Segregation collection. Even if it's segregated, the waste worker will, again mix it, and then you won't know what to do with it. So we've actually gone through the entire value chain, right from the household to the waste picker, and then also train the waste pickers to convert some of this organic waste into compost, converted that into a business model, and we are seeing some very good learnings from that as well. Again, here the Plastic Pact members want to also provide technologies and inputs because they think that they can mentor them. So this is the kind of ecosystem where you're sharing information, understanding the challenges, informing policy, enabling pilots is what the Plastic Pact is doing.
That's great. And, it's wonderful to see these 2 really good examples of, really sort of 360-degree multi-stakeholder efforts, which are both locally relevant, but really bring in the policy, business, and all of the different enabling environments. And Nupur, I'd like to bring you in and really sort of on two different angles, because, you know, one big question that we've had is the role that industry can play in really driving high ambition. And, you know, we're starting to really see we talk a lot about pilot programs at a government level, but also, you know, industry can play a really critical role in piloting as well. But also that we know already, you know, taking a bigger, broader, going back to the broad question of, is this treaty going to deliver for Asia and how? We know what a lot of the solutions are. It's really just understanding how to make them happen and how to enable that. So, you know, I'd like to sort of throw it to you, the role of both high ambition companies and the impact they can have, but really then how to make those solutions stick.
Thank you, Jessica. It's a very broad question, and it covers almost everything we want to achieve, but I'll try to answer that. I'm not sure how many people in the room know about our organization. Maybe show of hands would be nice. Have you all heard of TOMRA? Okay, I see. Okay, there's a few no's. It's 50-50. I'll do a very quick pitch, and it's for the right reasons. Believe me, I'm not marketing. We are a company that started 50 years ago with the invention of the reverse vending machine, which is a equipment that is used heavily around the world in collection of used beverage containers. But of course, we are innovating it to then accept other kinds of materials. But we also apply this sensor-based technology and this, along with smart systems, back-end systems, in mixed waste sorting, in recycling sorting, and also in mining food sorting. But we are also innovating into textile sorting and continuing to innovate in this space. But what are we trying to do? We feel that what we have been talking about in the last 50 years is about, of course, through experience and by failing and being successful, we've realized that we can only be successful with our technology, which is state-of-the-art, in a framework, in a sustainable framework that is guided by policy. And so as a business, we make a choice to not just sell our equipment or our technology for the sake of making profit. We push for sustainable frameworks. We work with the governments. We help design the entire solution, and then we go in and play fair. We will go and sit in the tender and do everything. We don't take it for granted. But our aim is to share our knowledge and to use our network that we have access to, the experts, the researchers, the expert people within our own organization, and to bring all that knowledge together. So what we are doing right now is we have summarized our knowledge into white papers. So we have papers on extended producer responsibility and how that plays a very key role in putting sustainable systems together. And those are the ones that do not fall over after 2-3 years when the funding ends. These are systems backed by political intent, political systems, legislation. So politicians can come and go, heroes can come and go, pledges can come and go. The law remains, the responsibilities remain, and they're futuristic. You can scale them, you can grow them, and you set high ambitions. And we push and push for that. We also then collect our knowledge through white papers and share them in different channels. We have been very actively involved, being a Norwegian company also, in front-ending the High Ambition Business Coalition at the United Nations Treaty. So my colleagues are in Uruguay at the moment, and we have published a position paper. And we are not only talking about our technology in that position paper. The first and the top point is every citizen of the world should have access to waste collection system. It's a right. It's almost a human right. So we are pushing for things like that. We're pushing for EPR, and that's our value proposition. And we are very happy to work with, NPAP or WWF or CII to help build those solutions for longevity.
Wonderful. Thanks. Thank you so much. And 3 really, really good examples. And so, I'm really heartened to see how, how a lot of this is starting to work already. But of course, we still have a very long way to go. Where we are now and where we need to be with the treaty there's a big gap in between. And so, some of the barriers, I think, and it'd be great to have a discussion about this and to hear from the audience if there's anything you want to focus on in particular. Some of the barriers are capacity, not just capacity at a national government level, but at all levels of government and across business as well. We're really going to need all sizes of business, including small and medium enterprises, to be on board. It's data. And data not just about the problem, but around the solutions, understanding what works, and money, obviously, it's there, but how to unlock it, how to de-risk it, and really that enabling, who are going to be the enablers. So that's just in our last few minutes, a few topics we can cover. I'd like to come to the audience in just a moment for questions. We're also going to do a poll question, so get your yes/no cards ready, and maybe we can do that right now before we go back to our panelists. Let me just ask, do you think that Asia, the treaty that we're being discussed and the process so far around the treaty negotiations is fit for purpose in Asia? Are the views of Asia being adequately represented in the treaty, yes or no?
It's a lot of
a lot of no's. Okay, so we've got a really long way to go. Panelists, I mean, I just threw out a bunch of topics. We're hearing a bit of pessimism from the audience. There's a long way to go. Anyone want to respond to that? Seema, do you want to respond to that?
So I think the question you raised, Jessica, about various sizes of industry and how do we bring all types of industry, it's very hard. I mean, you can see that the large companies are being pushed. Therefore, they are actually accepting targets and are saying they're doing that. The way that in CII we have worked on this is we go through the value chain and the supply chain of the large companies, because we believe that as buyers, they can exert a pressure on the supplier. Not only a pressure, they can also mentor. We see this as a partnership. We put the ownership on the large companies that it is your responsibility to make sure that your suppliers also learn how to do this transition. It's working for carbon. We hope it'll work for plastic. It'll work for nature. I also have this point that, from a business point of view, large or small, I mean, large can still manage. We need to also integrate many of these issues. One time we go and talk to them about climate and carbon. One time we go and talk to them about nature loss. The third day we talk to them about, plastic. Fourth day, water. So it's pretty hard for them. So in some ways, it's our responsibility. We run these platforms and collaborations. It's the responsibility of the government also that we make it into an integrated understanding for businesses to build their capacity to respond to these challenges. Then they will be able to see the risk and the opportunity better and take action. When they're seeing it in isolation, it's very hard, from a point of view of the entire 360-degree, as well as capacity constraints. So these are some of the things we need to really work on to get business mainstreamed, not just the large, but even the small and medium.
Yeah, Karana?
Yes, so when you asked, I was like, yes, but no, no, but yes. Because why I was doing that, I'm also supporting the Basel Convention, and they also starting to supporting what is needed to be in the Basel related to the Global Plastic Treaty. Also discussion with the World Trade Organization as well, related with the export, which, back to Indonesia again, our waterline is shipping all the trade coming from basically the raw material or in ASEAN, in Asia, then shipping to all over to the Europe, US countries. So again, it's really important if we see with the global map how important the role is. We cannot work alone. It has to be include Asia Pacific, including ASEAN as well. And what I heard from during the INC yesterday, like the few panel, they mentioned, and then when we discussed with the Basel Convention as well, the intention is there to make every voice is being heard, to be inclusive, and then the global South participant or representative are also joining the discussion. So hopefully, it will be yes, but can be no, depends on how much we understand the issue as well. Yeah. Because one of the keyword that was being discussed is the definition. Even one definition can be very to other people, to many people. Even one word like circular economy can be different absorb or being understand. So how people, local government, industry itself can truly understand circular economy, plastic economy in a very holistic manner. So they understand it. If they understand, then they're willing to do something as well. If they don't understand, they will ignore. For instance, like in NPAP, we work with a lot of the global FMCG company, which they also have a global target. They have to align if they want to get investment from international, apply with ESG principle, etc. They need to tick the sustainable box. But how about the local companies, like Indonesian companies that also need to be understand because there are so many. For instance, if we talk about the water mineral, there's so many different other local brands as well, which they may not have a good ambition. They have no target. They have no goals as well. So then, how the large multinational company can also support the capacity building for those companies as well.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important point. That's such, we just that awareness raising, knowledge raising, and really bringing all of these different groups into the journey. There's such a big way to go, such a long way to go. We're out of time, but Anupa, I'd love to come to you just for a final comment, just reflecting on some of those big obstacles. And, really I think the goal that we're talking about is an economy-wide transition. How do we get there?
I think we have some answers. We don't have all the answers, but we have some answers. Where Asia is at the moment, I will say Europe was 20 years ago. And so, of course, their ecosystem is different. Their requirements may have been different, but the ultimate ambition or purpose was the same. And we can learn from their journey. We can derive the key principles for those solutions. The technologies exist, they don't need proof. The legislative processes and examples exist, they don't need proof. We take them and we apply them in a very scientific manner. Singapore is a very good example. They've been trying to do a full scientific approach to implementing their Towards Zero plan. Of course, we will have an opportunity to speak about that later on. So we can start with what we have and build on it as we discover and do new innovations. And just to quickly answer your question on whether we are being represented at the global level in the treaty, the answer is I believe in the process. It's a half yes, half no. But it would have been great to start the INC here, where the major problem is. Why wasn't that the case? This is where we will make a difference. If you really so much want to make a dent into what we are trying to achieve, we have to solve Asia's problem first and foremost. So we don't want to be in the center, we should be leading. And it's up to the Asian leaders to take that upon themselves, to lead this discussion. And I just don't have the feeling that that's happening.
And that's such a wonderful place to end the discussion, because I think, that to me is the real takeaway. How do we really get Asia leading this discussion? Because as we said at the beginning, if the treaty fails in Asia, it fails everywhere. And so Asia really needs to be out in front leading this discussion. Thank you so much. The purpose of the World Ocean Summit and of gatherings like this is to learn from each other. You've got 3 amazing projects here. And so much knowledge. And I know that all 3 of these panelists are very happy to meet, talk to anyone, share their knowledge. They're all doing really, really good work at the front lines of really trying to tackle this plastic pollution crisis in Asia. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.